Hello and welcome back, Eddie Radosevich, Josh McCuistion back in studio. George Stoya here, back from his 7th vacation of the year. No, we're just giving you a hard time. Welcome back. A lot to get into today. Another recruiting report. Welcome back to SoonerScoop.com's YouTube page. Good time to join SoonerScoop.com. A pair of commitments over the weekend. More Brent Venables football camps. 24 offers have already gone out. We'll go over a lot of those guys here at the end of the show, kind of previewing day 4 coming up over, I guess, just down the street over in the indoor facility, and then obviously the track field coming up on Thursday or Tuesday. It was another really good camp on Thursday, though. We kind of wrapped everything up on Friday, just in terms of all the guys that did impress. I know that the Fakatua kid, I still can't get over that he's still just going to be a freshman in high school, Josh.
That's an alien. Like there's no, you throw the he's a freak stuff like that, but again, the stuff that blew me away, the more I went back and watched some of the video, and, for those that haven't, it's on the editorial page. The thing that's crazy is it's not that he's always big or he's athletic. Like, you see young guys like that. But, like, when somebody could actually catch him at the corner, he had a spin move. Yeah. Like, I'm like, what are you going to be in a couple years? Like,
and what were you doing to 8th graders a year ago?
Yeah, can you imagine, like, just some little 8th grader, like, just like, oh, yeah, I'm going out here to play some football, and then just gets massacred by this guy. I can't even.
Very unfortunate situation for him.
Yes.
Needless to say, a lot going on. Today was a big transfer portal news story out of the softball world. Bob Billow's been all over it. Kennedy, possibly, maybe. She entered the transfer portal. Maybe she's going to end up in Norman. That would be quite incredible for Patty Gasso.
I think that OU's certainly in the race. We'll see.
I think that they have to.
I mean, I had somebody ask me in my mailbag today, does OU have the NIL money in softball? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure OU's NIL in softball is maybe the best in the country. Yeah. So I don't think that they're lacking there.
No doubt about it. As George said, speaking of the mailbag, you can read that by joining SoonerScoop.com. Really good time for you out there, the YouTube viewer. We got a special promo going, $1 for 2 months. It's the same thing that it's been for the last couple weeks here. Promo code OU1, $1 for 2 months. Promo code OU1 for you guys out there on the YouTubes watching everything. I thought we could maybe get into there's a couple guys that committed, but today is the 30-year anniversary of the White Bronco high-speed chase for O.J. Simpson. Uncle Juice, R.I.P., it's something that you probably weren't even alive for, George.
I wasn't.
I know. That's very depressing.
My birthday,
I do remember that.
God. My birthday's coming up next week. I'll be turning 28.
I was watching that in middle school. Like, I remember, like, they brought a TV into the, like, and
crazy.
No, I'm thinking of The Verdict. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That was The Verdict.
I was going to say, because it was like during the evening, but it was during the NBA Finals.
They showed that in school, The Verdict?
Yeah,
it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was, George,
all the teachers were in on it.
But that's all anyone wanted to talk about.
Wow. When I was in school, of course, I went to a private school. They showed the Pope being chosen or whatever on TV.
I'm sure that was a big news story over at Bishop
At public schools, they don't allow us to know that he exists. Like he's
separation of church and state.
Exactly.
Absolutely correct. Arnold Palmer played in his final, I believe, U.S. Open that day as well. And then it was the NBA Finals that was going on at the same time. I do remember that. Mm-hmm. That was like one of the young things that I remember watching.
That was the Rockets and the Knicks?
Something like that, yeah.
I know it was the Rockets. I can't remember if that was the year they played the Knicks.
Obviously, it was in 1994. It was during a, what's it called? Strike year.
Yeah.
I want to say. That's why the finals were going on at such a late time. But now everything's extended out. Game 5 tonight for you Dallas fans. Hopefully Boston wins.
6.
So, anyways, well, I would hope not. It can't be Mavs in 6. That would be interesting, though, if they came back and just won 3 games and then were awarded the NBA championship. That would be very kind of sports world for me, because sports is kind of canceled right now after Rory's situation. Nonetheless, there has been a couple commitments over the weekend. Oklahoma picked up a commitment today. We had talked about on Friday in the preview going into the official visitor weekend. It was a big list of guys coming in for the official visits. Yeah. And one of the guys that we highlighted, Marcus Harris, a wide receiver out of Modern Day High School, one of the best high school programs in the country. Continued good news today for Emmett Jones with the announcement and subsequent commitment of Marcus Harris.
What Emmett Jones just keeps doing, we look at it and you see the room like, Jaden Gibson was there. Okay, Nick Anderson was there. But the depth and the talent of this room and how much better it's become, it's just amazing. And again, the guy just deserves a ton of credit. But Guys, a week ago, if we're recording this, Marcus Harris is not a name I even bring up if I go 10 deep in the wide receiver recruiting story. Like, he was not part of the equation. And I talked to Marcus this morning, and there was absolutely this feeling of, they were kind of always around. They never – Emmett never gave up on it, but there's no question that they just kind of a window kind of opened in his recruitment, and they said, we'd love to have you come out if you want to come. It was his third trip. I think people kind of assume like, you just got involved. He'd been out a couple times, so this wasn't all new to him, but there's no question that Oklahoma really did a good job closing this in the matter of 48 hours.
Josh, what kind of player is he? Looking at his profile here, 5'11", 185, obviously comes from a great program, but what kind of receiver is OU getting?
Yeah, you're talking about a guy that at modern day, obviously, and we've got some tape I know available of Marcus Harris, but there is a guy that he's going to play inside, he can play outside. You can do a lot of different stuff with him, but I see him kind of as a slot guy. He's real long-armed, kind of, I would say, and I hate that I go to this comparison so often, but kind of a Sterling Shepard type of guy. Like I said, going to be I probably has maybe a little more speed, a little more juice than Sterling did, but obviously we'll see if he's capable of being that level of player. But yeah, you can see some of the clips here. A guy that really does a little bit of everything, and I think that's what we're seeing. There's definitely a pattern in Emmett Jones's recruiting where they want a complete guy. They don't want guys that can only do this or only do that. That's an unbelievable catch. Caught a couple games in this stadium that they're playing in here in Orange County. So, again, a lot of reasons this is big. But, again, just look at it with the speed, stretching the field there. And I believe that might be J. Sarah Catholic he's playing. So, and this is against St. John Bosco, another elite program, one of the top 5 in the country. And watching him make these plays, this is just a guy that has I think you'll notice as you watch him more and more, he plays a little bit bigger than his 5'11", 180 he's listed at.
Competitive catches.
Mm-hmm.
That's what stands out.
He joins third wide receiver commitment in the 2025 class, joining Elijah Thomas, obviously, from Shakota, as well as Grayson Harris. For 3 guys now for Emmett Jones in 2025, it seems like a class that we talked about that was going to be somewhat tinier than maybe that what we're used to. Would that be it at wide receiver now?
It's really tough for me to believe they are going to pass on Andrew Marsh. Now, you've started to see, and we're seeing it in both 2025 and 2026 because, right before we started recording, we saw Texas pick up a quarterback commitment. You're going to see those dominoes start to fall in 2026 where the quarterback recruiting is about to pick up. Obviously, a lot of OU fans waiting on the Jaden O'Neal stuff, and I think I continue to like where OU is there. But in 2025 at receiver, over the weekend you had Quincy Porter commit to Ohio State. So you're starting to see some of these guys start to fall into place as well. And I think with Marsh, I really struggle to believe that there's a way Emmett Jones is going to be like, we're good on Andrew Marsh. So I think there's a spot for him, and a couple other guys could still be in play. But I think you're starting to see it get pretty close to the wire.
Big picture-wise, too, Modern Day High School, never a bad program to get into. We were talking about earlier, Jeremiah Cradell obviously was the last Oklahoma commit from Modern Day High School, but certainly not a place that you don't want to continue trying to develop some type of recruiting pipeline.
Yeah, because even if Modern Day wasn't, a talent producer on their own, kids in Southern California end up at Modern Day and end up at Bosco. So that you're good. The Marcus Fakatua kid, would it shock me in 2 years if he's wearing one of those uniforms?
Sure.
Absolutely not.
Sure.
So I think that is a good sign. And I talked to Marcus about it, and he said, absolutely. I'm wearing the OU gloves and, letting everybody know I'm there and trying to be a presence for OU. I think the best sign of it is Emmett Jones lands a wide receiver from California. Todd Bates is like, pipeline started.
Exactly.
We want all the Modern Day guys we can get.
Is it safe to say, and I feel like I say this too often on this show, but about several guys on staff, but is it safe to say Emmett Jones has asserted himself as maybe a top recruiter on this staff?
He's in that conversation. If you talk about receiver, obviously it all starts with Brian Hartline at Ohio State. His credentials are just hard to match at this point. But, you go down the list, and I would have trouble believing you could get more than 3 or 4 names off before Emmett Jones has got to be part of that conversation. So now as he starts to produce, You watch, we all kind of expect a huge year from Deion Burks, Nick Anderson, those kind of guys. Once those guys start having the NFL credentials, then I think it goes to even a different level. But
you start getting a couple more guys on like actual Biletnikoff lists and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden it skyrockets into maybe you can start talking about him in the same breath as Brian Hartline.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, again, and he's a guy – we talk about it all the time. Like, there are some guys around football, and you're like, he's just cool. Like, Emmett Jones, like, you're around him, like, that guy's just cool. And so it's no surprise. Every recruit that is around him just loves him. That's why we watch OU have a chance over and over again. Again, Marcus Harris is not part of the conversation. And then in a week's time, not only is he on for a visit, but he's committed, and he told me there'll be no more visits. He's done.
I think it's also crazy, too, Emmett. You talk about the way he's recruited, but you even look at last year, the way he developed some of those guys. I mean, that was people forget that receiver room was a group that a lot of people thought was not going to be very good last year. And Drake Stoops obviously was phenomenal. Nick Anderson had a huge year. Jalil Farouk was great. So he's done a really good job developing. I know it's only been 1 year under him, but he's done a great job developing.
Well, and that makes it even bigger year. And not to put a lot of pressure on him, but somebody like a Jaquez Petaway, if he can burst onto the scene this season, then you look back and it's like, okay, maybe you got the start of something special with this group that they're bringing in.
Absolutely. And, I know George and I were so gung-ho about Nick Anderson. Like, week 2, we're like, this guy's got first-round type talent. Yep. And everybody's like, well, that's crazy. People don't remember, like, Nick was a mid-3, high, a low-4 kind of recruit. He wasn't the, surefire, no doubt, CeeDee Lamb kind of recruit. Like, he was a good player. But his growth, I mean, everybody knew he was talented, but how much he developed last year, that's really impressive, and I think people take that for granted.
Again, 16th commitment now in the 2025 class. He was the second commitment of the weekend because Ryder Mix kind of kicked things off on Saturday after camping at Oklahoma, Frisco Lone Star High School, same high school as Marvin Mims, correct?
Yep,
and
that's
obviously had some connections back to Oklahoma. His father played baseball at Oklahoma in the early 2000s. But, speaking of Austin Mix, or Ryder Mix, excuse me, added to the 2026 class, tied into a good big get for Joe John Finley.
Yes, that's a really nice win for Oklahoma. I mean, you watch Ryder Mix here at camp. He was one of the more fun, like tight ends. It's tough for them to have a lot of fun in a camp setting or to look, like make it fun video. But just watching him knock guys over and be so physical like he was, you're like, wow, that's great. And then you watch him go out, and maybe my favorite. Not favorite strong, but like one of the favorite things I watched all day was when he went out in one-on-ones, Eddie, and you were out there with me, and he takes a rep, and I can't remember. It was against one of the guys we were watching. It was a good player he was going against. It might have been Caden Henderson. And he takes a rep, and the Caden or whoever the defender was starts to pull his shirt, and it's over his head. Yeah. And, I mean, without even a hesitation, he just flips it off his head and goes to make the catch. And you're like, that's – like – it's a little thing, but you're like, he didn't get panicked. Sure. He didn't freak out about it. He was like, okay, this is what I got to do. I'm going to make a play. So I just like, and talking to him, he's a super level-headed kid. He's a win.
No doubt about it, too. And just in the conversations that you had with him about growing up an Oklahoma fan, you saw some of the pictures that he put out of, growing up in Oklahoma garb. It would seem that this is a very comfortable commitment for Oklahoma, a very hard commitment. I would say.
I don't think OU's got a lot to worry about here. This is one, and again, he really likes Joe John Finley. He talked about that being the coach he wants to play for, and really those two having a good relationship. It's a good win in 2026 to already have him, because this is a guy Oklahoma offered him very early on, and again, you watch him here. This is a guy on tape that's just killing people. I mean, he's going to bury this guy. And, Eddie, I remember we were talking about this at camp the other day. He's violent with his hands. Yeah. He's like a defensive lineman with the way he'll strike you with his hands. And I'm just super impressed by that punch. And, again, this is a guy that's just a sophomore. I mean, he's a young guy, plays in Frisco ISD, a pretty good district. I mean, there's good competition there. Lone Star's a good program. I think the year we were talking about with Marvin Mims, I believe they went to state semis that year, if I remember correctly.
Got beat by Highland Park in an overtime game at Jerry World. We were both at.
Did they? I thought they
did they win?
Won.
No,
yeah,
they beat Highland Park,
and then they lost the next
week.
Right.
That's right. So they might have even got to the state championship. Garrett Rangel, Oklahoma State quarterback, was their quarterback at the time.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, just look at him blocking out on the edge. This is a guy. we talked about it with Trinae Washington last week. Like, can he be an inline guy? This guy can be whatever you want him to be. You want to line him out wide? Fine. He's athletic enough to do that. You want to put him over, next to the tackle? He can do that too. And I talk about willing blockers a lot. This guy likes it. Like, I mean, you can tell. Like, he mixes it up. He, pardon the pun, but just super, super physical.
6'4", 220. Like he obviously could put on some more weight, and he runs really well. He could also even maybe grow an inch, being so young. But Josh, how big of a win is this for Joe John? I know that he has the OU connections, and that obviously makes it a little bit easier commitment. I know he also said that this was like his dream school playing at Oklahoma, but I mean, tight end recruiting, I feel like this is a pretty good get for Joe John, especially starting off the 2026 class.
I mean, you look at the offer list, guys. You're talking about Ole Miss, A&M, Kansas State, Oregon, Penn State. I mean, he's got a lot of good ones. This is a guy that was coveted. And all these schools, I mean, we see it sometimes where people say, well, why didn't he have better offers? Well, that's because everyone knows he's going somewhere. These schools all knew the situation. They knew the score, and they went ahead and made an offer anyway. So I think it says a lot about his talent. So for Joe John, again, it's not just about, he won and he needed a win. He did. That's fair. But at the same time, to do it this early and you can kind of build your class. Because, guys, we referenced it. He's got a teammate in Jordan Deck that Oklahoma offered a couple weeks ago at camp. So now you get to try and kind of build that relationship. And Frisco ISD, we're talking about modern day as a growing place. There's no place in the country growing faster than Frisco. So if you have good relationships up there, that can pay off down the road.
Frisco Lone Star will be one of like 25 high schools in the Frisco area.
In no time.
Yeah, probably by next year. And they're already at, I think, like 8.
I think it's crazy.
I want to say it's below 10, but maybe getting close to 10.
Yeah.
So the second commitment in the 2026 class for Oklahoma, joining Jonathan Hatton, obviously, out of San Antonio, Cibalo Steel High School. So really good start for Oklahoma, picking up a pair of commitments. And especially, I think, when you look back on Friday's show and talking about kind of the previewing of the weekend, it was like they might be able to get somebody, but it's going to have to be a little bit of a surprise. And Marcus Harris obviously, I guess, did that. He went there on Monday, committing to Oklahoma. So a pair of commitments over the weekend. It was a big official visit weekend, and it sounds like everything was pretty positive with the name that has become quite familiar on this program in offensive tackle Michael Fasusi.
Yeah. Guys, there's a chance that when people look back on the recruiting report from Friday, they're like, Josh was really negative. I think there's a chance that could be a weekend where you see 3, 4, 5 guys end up in Oklahoma's class from that visit weekend of, 8 guys, and one of them being Trent Wilson, who was already committed. So I thought it went very well. From everybody I've talked to, Michael Fasusi, I can't say, I don't know that he's spoken to many, but I know I had a chance to talk with him just briefly. And, he talked about it. Oklahoma with him has just been so consistent. Like, their message is the same. What they're talking to him about it is the same. And when he talks, the thing he mentions every time, it doesn't even matter if I bring it up or reference it. He's like, it's the development. At Oklahoma, I know I'm going to get developed. They're going to make me better. That is a common talking point. And it's not to say that he's saying, if I went to Texas or I went to A&M, that's not going to happen. He just has a lot of faith in Bill Bedenbaugh. And so I think in talking to a lot of people, and I know you guys have heard some stuff too, I think the visit went as well as it possibly could. OU did everything they could to be where they want to be.
What's next for him, Josh? Because I know that he's got some more visits coming up that could also potentially help his decision.
Yeah, he's got a midweek visit to Oregon. Supposed to leave, I believe, on Tuesday. Come back from that, obviously with 48 hours, he'll be back Thursday. Then have, about a night at home, and then he'll hit the road for Austin for his final official visit on the 21st. Texas has been the perceived leader for a while. There's no question. I'm very interested to see, and I know, talking to some good sources around Norman, there's a feeling of how is that going to be his third official visit in a week's time? Does he get a little fatigued? Is he just a little worn out about it? So we'll see. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, that's a unknown thing, but I think Oklahoma really liked that they had him just coming in clean on the weekend, got to really spend a lot of time with him. He was the only offensive lineman there, and from everything I've gathered, they put a lot, talking to some of the players, talking to some of the, just various sources, you could tell that there were several guys that were kind of earmarked. Like Brent Venables got a lot of time with this guy. Brent Venables spent a lot of time with this dude, and I don't think that's accidental. And I guarantee you that Michael Fazuzzi is one of them.
Official visitor host was Daniel Akinkumi, right?
Yes. Yep. And those two, it kind of started funny because when Mike came down, I guess in mid-April, right before the spring game, he came for his last unofficial visit prior to this one, and Daniel was injured, and they just ended up kind of talking on the field and kind of hit it off.
I remember that. I think I remember seeing him up at spring practice, right?
Spring practice, yeah.
Yep. And so I think that's where it all kind of started. And, you guys have met Daniel.
Sure.
Like, he's so easygoing, easy to talk to. It makes a ton of sense. And Mike's very similar. So I would guess those two hit it off pretty well. And, I've never talked to Mike a lot about his nationality, but I know that there's going to be some similar kind of African background there.
Sure.
Is there a timeline on when he wants to make a decision?
I don't think Mike has set a date. Now that I say that, I have this thought in my head like maybe he has, and maybe I'm wrong about that. But I know he'll be done by probably mid-July. That would very much be my expectation. So he'll take this visit. He'll go. He'll sit down with his family. And again, everybody I talk to, just my impression has long been this is going to be Michael's choice. My feeling has been the family is very, very much comfortable with Oklahoma. Like I won't say, my impression is that Oklahoma believes that's what the family wants him to do. I'm sure Texas probably has the same opinion. Everybody kind of thinks those kind of things. But I do know in talking to people, Oklahoma really has hit the right notes with Mom and just the family in general.
It seems like it was a weekend of, I don't want to say like just complete surprises, but another visitor from over the weekend, Elijah Melendez, linebacker that's currently committed to Miami. Sounds like Zach Alley and Brent Venables did a really good job there, maybe even more so coming out of it, and you're thinking that, well, maybe they can flip him.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question to me because with talking to Elijah, I think in this era, it used to be like, oh, yeah, everybody, all these kids just talk to you. Anymore, if the kids respond to you on Sundays and they're talking to you, that's usually a pretty good sign.
Right.
That tells you something. And I bet I took, 15, 20 minutes of Elijah's time. And he was super good about it. It was never a problem. But we talked and he gave me some real answers. And I pressed him. I said, look, man, everybody thinks it's Miami. Or, it's at the very least, it's not going to be Oklahoma. And I said, how realistic is this chance? And he was like, they have as good a shot as anybody. Or as good a shot as possible.
Sure.
That's what he said. That sounds like they lead. Like that's what that sounds like when I hear it. And I know talking to a few sources, there was some impression of that. Like maybe Oklahoma has actually jumped to the forefront. Now, he's got Miami this weekend.
Right.
You don't know.
It's what we talked about on Friday about Oklahoma kind of facing the battle that has benefited them in the last couple cycles, just as far as guys coming from inside the region, keeping them here, as opposed to having to go back into Miami and get somebody out of Kissimmee. Yeah.
Now, it does help. For those that are not Florida geography aficionados, which I know George is a big geography guy. He was explaining this to me
not at all.
Kissimmee is just outside of Orlando.
Sure.
So there are there's not the obvious, he's in Miami's backyard.
Right, he's
it's
not
a
in
little
Dade
different.
County.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So there is, it's a short flight either way. You want to go to Coral Gables or Norman, it's all about the same probably. But, although he does have to go through Orlando Airport, but that's another conversation altogether.
That's fair.
Anyway, this is interesting because Oklahoma, for all the people that love to talk about the NIL stuff, Oklahoma's has had the lion's share of the wins when they've gone head up with Miami lately. Maybe they can do it again. If so, like you said, my impression is that this is the guy Zach Alley has identified at Mike. It's kind of his guy almost from the start, from what I've gathered.
He looks like a beast too. Some of the photos that came out from this weekend that they took on his visit. This dude looks jacked. He's listed at 6'1.5", 224. I bet he's closer to 230, but ranked as the 9th best linebacker by On3 in the 2025 class. So, that would be a huge get for Oklahoma. And obviously Zach Alley. I think I said on Friday's show, we haven't really seen that happen yet for Zach Alley. So that would be, to get him to flip would be massive.
And as you watch the tape, just kind of, George talking about being a big guy. This is a guy at a really good program. For those that remember, this is Derek LeBlanc's school. They, they're consistent, kind of state quarterfinalists, state semifinalists. This is a really good program. he plays a lot of running back for them. Like, that tells you the level of athlete you're talking about here. So just a big-time player.
Any other news and notes coming out of the official visitor weekend that you want to hit before we move on to some of the other guys? Because Oklahoma's right back into the official visit, schedule coming up on Tuesday.
The other guy I would really say to keep an eye on is Mark Iannachor. I've talked to Mark a lot of times and never actually bothered to get that clarified. But talking to some people that know him, I think Oklahoma's in pretty good shape. Now, he is still playing. He's already announced he's canceled his Washington official visit. I know a lot of people are reading into that. My anticipation is that he's going to take another visit this coming weekend. I just don't think it was going to be to Washington anymore. So we'll keep an eye on that. If he doesn't, then I really like where Oklahoma's at. But let's just see what he kind of does on the final weekend here.
Zach Alley involved with both of them.
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
And I know the interesting thing is when I was talking to Mark, he was like, oh, yeah, Elijah, that's my guy. And I was like, oh, how do you know each other? And he goes, oh, we just met this weekend. And I was like, oh, and I kind of blew it off. But then Elijah was like, oh, yeah, that's my guy. Like, they really connected, and I think that's kind of an interesting thing to watch.
Very good. Oklahoma does jump back into hosting official visitors on Tuesday. Yeah. Lamont Rogers coming up for his official visit during the midweek.
Yeah. Just another, top 100 offensive tackle coming to campus. I mean, it's just becoming old hat for Oklahoma. But, yeah, here's Lamont. You can see him, with the little brace on his left shoulder from Dallas Under Armour back in, I guess that was March, Eddie?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Late February, early March, I want to say.
Or let's say early spring, we'll call it. But, Lamont is a massive, big, long offensive tackle. Now, he's got a lot of work to do, but, again, I just think when you talk about total upside, you can make a case that Lamont Rogers, for all the tackles that Oklahoma's involved with, you could make an argument that he could be maybe the one with the biggest ceiling. But my impression is, I get the impression he's really high on Missouri right now. That's kind of the hot pick with him. I know they've done a lot to impress, a lot of different guys with NIL and some of the stuff they've got going. So I kind of like where Missouri is. Oklahoma's got a chance. I think it may be a deal where some of these schools are getting to the point where they're having to make a decision, because we've talked about this before. Lamont Rogers, Michael Fasusi, and Ty Haywood are not all going to the same school.
Sure.
That's not going to happen. So they're all going to end up at 3 different places. Where are those places going to be? That's a lot of conjecture. I mean, we don't know yet. But I think it's going to be – now you're starting to see the music starting to slow down and everybody's starting to try to find their chairs, both from a school perspective and from the players themselves.
Josh, let me just ask you this off the rip here. What are OU's chances of landing one of those 3 guys you just mentioned? Lamont Rogers, Ty Haywood, Michael Fasusi.
That's a great question. I would say, I mean, if you were going to say from a collective standpoint, like, will they get one of the 3? I would say if I had to pick yes or no, if it's if it's true, false, I would say true. Like, they'll get one of them. I would have said it was Ty Haywood, and I still think that's a really good chance. And for those that don't know,
I was going to say, what's the situation? He didn't make it in for the weekend.
Yeah, he did end up not making his visit. I again want to state, this was not one of those, flat tire, cancel thing. This was a real situation that he had to take care of with his family. Perfectly. No one at OU is sore. Everybody gets it. It's completely okay. The expectation is that he's going to come in this weekend. And I think that's a great sign for Oklahoma, for him to just be able to reschedule and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to come in. We'll see if that actually is what happens. If maybe he tries to do a midweek visit, well, we just don't know.
It would be a pretty comfortable situation, considering this weekend is another big barbecue weekend for Oklahoma recruiting.
Honestly, you could argue that it's better for Oklahoma. They get
a lot more commits, everybody in the family atmosphere, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot there that could make sense. I mean, he'll be, Ryan Foje will be there. Owen Hollenbeck will be there. They can kind of talk about, it's an offensive line class. Let's see how this goes. So I think there are some things there that could make sense. But then again, you also have Andrew Babalola coming in. So there's a bit of a, what's good, what's not, and we don't know. But if we're saying Oklahoma's going to get one of the 4, and I could throw Babalola in, I feel very confident about that. I don't know. And again, I could see it being Rogers. I don't know. I kind of don't think that's going to be the fit. But between Fasusi, Babalola, and Haywood, I just don't think they're going to miss on all 3. Maybe I'm wrong, and that's okay. I mean,
we'll be sitting here having a much more spirited conversation.
OU fans are going to be super happy and love to watch that one if that's the case.
Well, and if they miss all 4, then we'll have a Doom pod. Or Doom Show. Doom
Yeah,
Recruiting
a
Report.
Doom pod with the possibility of having Owen Hollenbeck, who is clearly their favorite center prospect. I still love where they are with Darius Afalava, who I know is a guy they really value. And Ryan Foje is a potential top 50 offensive player or top 50 player in the country. And we're like, the offensive line's a shambles. Like, I know nobody wants to hear that crap. And I think everybody's just getting to the point where they're accepting that if you get just one of these four, it's a huge victory. You've done what you needed to do. But get your minds around that and then just hope for one of the four. Like that's the idea.
No doubt about it. Before we – and you've been cut off from the Doom Pod is what Carrie says in the ear. We apologize.
That's fine. I don't want to curse again. My mom will get mad.
Well, we don't want that.
That's upsetting. I don't know. George and I have never done a Doom Pod together, and I think we'd really feed on
Eddie was there.
It's kind of fun when you get him going a little bit.
Yeah.
Almost jumped out of the press box.
Start flying. That would have been, as long as we were able to get it on Scoop HD, I think that
it would have been great.
It would have been great for numbers.
A lot of content.
Well, I might have jumped with you after that evening. Before we get to the official visiting weekend coming up and all that stuff that comes with the barbecue, we do have 2 more days of Brent Venables football camp, kind of rounding out the entirety of the month. Or I guess 3-week schedule, really, with day 4 coming up on Tuesday, day 5 coming up on Thursday. 24 offers have already been out. Carrie's made some pretty awesome graphics that we can go into. All the guys that have been offered, starting with the quarterback, running back, wide receiver units. And this is where everything kind of stands now. Peyton Houston, Trey Taylor, obviously the 2 2027 quarterbacks that got offered over the course of last weekend. And then you move into everything else with Micah Rhodes, Tyson Robinson, Jalen Pyle, Delvin Cook. And then maybe the weirdest, or not weirdest, but most, I guess, unusual story of them all in the Devion Bonwell Whitty kid out of South Dakota, which you just don't see very often. Somebody that Chuck Lilly had played a part in getting to campus, Josh.
Yeah, he's an awesome story. And I just for the sake, and Carrie has made this wonderful graphic, people are going to yell at it. Tyson Robinson's a 2027 guy. We know it. It's fine. It's no big deal.
To be fair,
we have some blame being thrown around.
It was probably my fault.
Okay, sure. So, but yeah, to your point with the Bonwell Witt kid, like I've said it before, I've never seen this in the Dakotas, and really, even if you come down to like Nebraska, like there's nothing to support, or not to support, but nothing that I've ever seen like this. Like it's really interesting for Oklahoma to make that offer, and again. Look at what Emmett Jones is doing with wide receiver recruiting. He doesn't have to offer someone he doesn't like. He's going to get a pretty good share of big-time players. And for him to offer, Delvin Cook from Dallas Skyline, who we know has a track record of big-time guys, Jalen Pyle, you just go down the list here, and it's all these big-time guys, and you're like, and there's this guy from the Dakotas. And he was really good. I mean, I'm not knocking him at all. It's just surprising because usually if you get somebody out of there, it's a big body.
No doubt about it. Looking at the offensive line, guys, and that was kind of that first session. It was there we go, Tyson Robinson, 2027, for all you people that are probably already in the comments bitching. It was my fault. Get over it. And we do apologize to the Tyson Robinson family.
Absolutely.
It started off with that Thursday morning, that first session, unbelievable group of offensive linemen, and it's continued throughout.
It really has. I mean, this group – and I know, I think George asked me last week, if you had to pick one, who did you really like? Brian Swanson, the lone 2027 guy, I just love his potential. And you watch him on his huddle stuff, guys, he just moves back and forth between right tackle and left guard seamlessly. And if he's a guard, he's physical and he's burying people, and if he moves to tackle, he can absolutely play out in space. So I just like him a lot. And
another one of those guys that, as we've talked about before, coming from a great program in South Oak Cliff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, was, again, a whisper from winning 3 straight state titles last year. And, they're one of the favorites again this year in Texas. But another guy, Chancellor Barclay, was a guy that I think we all just liked a lot.
He was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was one of those guys that after the one-on-one stuff, it's like he's getting an offer.
Yeah.
He was good enough that it was very, I don't know, it was like very obvious almost. It was this guy deserves one.
Bill, we know Bill's a happily married guy, but if there was a type he had, it's the combo guard tackle guy. Sure. He loves the guy he can move around and do some stuff with. Chancellor Barclay's that kind of dude. He's got the length and athleticism. He could play tackle, but at the same time, he's a big enough guy with his base. He could absolutely play guard.
Before we move on, Eddie, I'd like you to try to announce the third name on that list if we get that graphic.
Oh, that's my guy, Primus.
What about that first name?
Pulaletti.
Ooh, I like
That was pretty good.
Pula
That was
Eletti.
pretty good.
Pulaletti. I believe it's how it's pronounced. Primus is my guy. Great offensive lineman name, too. The defensive line group, obviously, it was kind of, I guess, headlined by a couple guys. I think Fakatoa is obviously somebody that we're going to be talking about for years to come. But for my money and just in terms of one-on-one stuff, Joseph Terry, the kid from Rancho Santa Margarita High School, I thought he was excellent.
Yes, he is. He is from Rancho Santa Margarita, California, and Santa Margarita High School.
Santa Margarita Catholic, right?
You're right. So make sense of that.
Sure.
But whatever. So, but yeah, he was absolutely outstanding. And again, kind of along the lines of what we were talking about, where while we have no doubt about Marcus, like he wasn't going against the same kind of offensive line group that Joseph Terry saw, or the what T.I., isn't that what we decided? The big guy from Colorado. So
Umakais.
Yeah, those guys, they faced really good offensive line groups. And, I mean, every rep they were facing, Evan Goodwin. And they were going against a lot of those guys that were on that previous list. This crew, just dominated. I mean, Joseph Terry probably had 2 losses and took a bunch of reps. So, again, I just loved his athleticism. I loved his, kind of like what I talked about with Marcus earlier, his ability to counter. I thought that was really impressive for a young guy.
Can you name me the last OU player to go to Santa Margarita Catholic High School?
I actually can, so I won't cheat it, but it's a good one.
Recent?
It's one of our,
and it's a name you definitely know.
Friend of the program.
Yeah.
Santa Margarita. I don't know.
Grant Calcaterra.
I did not realize that.
Yes.
Once
I knew
labeled,
when you guys were saying that, I was like, pretty sure Grant Calcaterra went there.
Absolutely correct.
I don't think that I put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
Once labeled as an offensive tackle by a recruiting industry expert.
Yeah, that's crazy. And to be fair too, looking at the rest of the offers, Caden Henderson I thought was unbelievable. Cooper Witten, same vein. Both of those guys just realizing that they're both going into their sophomore seasons is kind of crazy. And then Bryson Brown, that's going to be a name that I think we're pretty familiar with moving forward here over the next couple. The Owasso kid. I'm
trying to run through it here, guys. Is he the only new in-state offer we've had through this camp?
I believe so.
I think that's right. Yeah. That's crazy. Because, last year, you had Mason James, you had Caden Jones, you had several guys. I guess Mason was later. But you had Caden go out during camp along with Evanson Malaska, who I think we're going to see tomorrow, actually.
Great.
Yeah, so
Jocelyn's little brother, obviously, from Bethany.
Yeah, yes. So there's it's kind of an interesting year for in-state guys because I really like some of the young talent, but I know some of the guys, Caden Penny is a guy I had mentioned a lot from Bixby. He actually is not going to be able to make it to camp, so that's going to hurt him. He'll be on that offer.
Another 2028 offer that will happen be eventual.
Absolutely. So again, with Bryson, just a very good technical player. The thing I think I like about him the most is he's big and sturdy enough that if corner doesn't work, and I think he fits OU scheme pretty well at corner, but if it didn't, you could slide him to safety pretty easily and be comfortable.
And who knows? I mean, you're talking about a Jordan Deck who, is a teammate at Lone Star, Frisco Lone Star of Ryder Mix. So always good to have somebody in the locker room that's helping.
Yeah. Just a really impressive dude watching him work.
No doubt. It's going to be fun over the next couple of days, kind of wrapping everything up from Brent Venables football camp, day 4 and day 5 coming up on Tuesday, Thursday this week, kind of leading into what is going to be an even bigger, I would imagine, barbecue weekend that, to piggyback it off of what was obviously a very successful official visit weekend. I know that we were talking before we, really kind of got started here. Just everything that was out there on social media, it seemed like that was a big presentation weekend for Oklahoma. I would imagine the same will be coming up this weekend with the barbecue. A pretty big list of guys already.
Yeah, there are currently 15. We on 3's visit page still has Quincy Porter listed. I'm not expecting that visit to happen. So we've got 15 guys, but I mean, you look at it, guys. Isaiah Gibson, the number 27 player in the country, currently committed to USC. Andrew Babalola, who we already mentioned. Andrew Marsh, another guy. Smith Arogbo, who, for On 3 is the number 26 overall player in the country, just announced that he's going to make his decision. I believe it was July 1st.
Yeah, July 1. And, I think that there's been some tech buzz out there lately. He was a guy that you went and saw during the spring tour.
Yeah, he's a Houston area guy. Went and made 3 trips to Hastings before we got everything settled away. But a really, really talented guy. And he is the kind of guy when Brent Venables and the staff came in and they talked about, we're going to change the body types, we're going to have different kind of guys. These are the kind of guys he's talking about. Smith is every bit of 6'5" and 225, 230 pounds, and shows explosion and burst. It's a comparison to PJ Adebawore is not fair because PJ is one of the most unique body types I've ever seen, but that's kind of what you're talking about. That kind of big guy that still has a lot of room to put on weight. And again, to me, there's always been this kind of feeling like, does Oklahoma, are they going to have a spot for him? Are they going to have space? I can't see that being a question. Like, I just feel like that's a guy you take and you sort out the numbers at a later date.
No doubt. It's going to be interesting. It's very, very recruiting intensive here over the next couple of weeks because then you kind of get to that point at the beginning of August where everybody starts breaking away and you start your high school season before not too long. So it's going to be an interesting month around these parts. I would imagine, too, that, and we had talked about it, we kind of teased it on Friday, there's going to be a couple more commitments you would imagine here over the next couple weeks for Oklahoma.
Yeah, if you were, and I know you didn't ask, but if I was going to pick one guy you want to keep an eye on, CJ Nixon. I think that's a pretty good one to keep a close eye on over the next week.
Okay. He announced his top two, right?
Right.
OU and OSU.
It's a Bedlam duel.
Yeah. So
which Oklahoma usually loses the Bedlam duel, the actual duel.
Yes.
On the
with
wrestling
singlets
mats,
on. Yeah, absolutely.
It does seem though, Josh, that over the next couple of weeks and probably the next month, we'll kind of have an idea of what exactly this class is going to look like in terms of numbers, right?
Yes,
I know you've said you've thought it might be smaller, but then you're also like, there's so many different guys they're in on that it could be maybe bigger than what we anticipate.
Absolutely. I mean, as they stand now, I think it is, I want to make sure I got this right, 16 now with the commitment of Marcus Harris. So, you talk about it. We talked about Andrew Marsh. Well, there's still Cortez Mills, who I know they liked a lot. He was in this weekend and talking to some people. I think that visit went really well. Then you look at the defensive line where they're still in play for Floyd Bucard, who was in this weekend. Christian Evans will be in next weekend. Then you got Smith Arogbo, Max Granville. Like, you start going on the list, and there's a bunch of guys. And it's just like, how is this going to stay under 24? Like, unless is Oklahoma rooting against themselves? Like we don't want to recruit that well because we got to keep the numbers down. Like, that's the only thing that really mathematically makes sense because there's 15, 20 guys that are still very much in play for 10 spots. And I think Oklahoma's recruited well enough that they should get a pretty good amount of that group.
I guess it's somewhat a good problem to have
at
the end of the day, trying to decide between all of these high-quality athletes.
If you're lower on the depth chart, I don't know how good you feel about it, but everybody else should be pretty excited about it.
George has always said that you would try to get them arrested on their official visit, and then you just start eliminating people one by one.
That's a good way to do it.
That's how I think, at least. All right, very good. That's going to do it for a recruiting report. Back out at camps on Tuesday, Thursday this week to kind of close out the Brent Venables football camp, I guess, for the summer 2024. It's kind of crazy that we're already in the middle of June, but there it is. Nobody said anything about my tooth today,
I was about to say, are you going to be back on the show tomorrow, or are you going to be at the dentist?
Well, I'm going to the dentist tomorrow, but hopefully I'll be back for the show.
Okay.
I wanted to commend you. You've done an outstanding job masking it. I think you've really
not
done.
Wanted anybody to see me.
I thought you might have a lisp.
I'm very cognizant. No, I'm very something. See?
Oh yeah,
it's a look. It could become a signature.
It looks like a. Well, I thought about that, and then I thought,
you'll fit in well in the SEC.
That's even more so. Thought about doing like a like a white trash bit on Twitter, but we know how that will go.
Instead of SEC ready, it's SEC Eddie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's great. Beautiful. That would be perfect. All right, for George and Josh, I'm Eddie. We'll see you right back here on the SoonersScoop.com YouTube page.